Good morning. I hope you've all had a wonderful Saturday and Saturday evening with wonderful discussions and talks. And unfortunately, we've already reached our last day here. It always goes so fast, so many preparation and work going into it over weeks and months, and then it's over just like that. We've got 2 more presentations this morning, and what I'd like to do is ask our presenter to present the first speaker.
Auch von mir, guten Morgen.
Yeah, right, good morning from me too.
Okay, also ich freue mich aber auch auf den Vortrag.
I'm also looking forward to this presentation. It's about how to support
einen Jugendlichen oder einen
a young adult, a child or a grown-up with Charge syndrome in making choices and decisions. And our presenter will be Gail, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to what we're going to get to hear from her. Over to you.
You want to hold it? Yes. Thank you, Christian. Yeah. Thank you. Isn't it amazing to have the opportunity to be back together again after all the virtual webinars and everything that we've gone through? So we had some last-minute hiccups when I thought I might not be able to come. So, poor Claudia. So it's really lovely that we've been able to be back with you all, and I hope that you've all really had a great time being together again. So one of the things I'm very fortunate to have done is, in my role, I work as a consultant teacher for children and young people who are deaf-blind. And I used to be a principal, and then I decided I just wasn't seeing children to work with them anymore. So I wanted to go back to the reasons why I became a teacher, and that was to work with children and young people. So I then set myself up as an independent consultant teacher, and the privilege of that is that I choose just to work with children and young people with Charge syndrome. Yay! So every day is a great day for me. And this is just one of the young ladies that I started working with her when she was 6 months old, and she's now in her 20s. I can't believe where that time has gone. But I've been in that same position for a number of children and young people. Excuse me. And one of the things that I've become very aware of is, as they're moving into adulthood, even though we're using a person-centered planning approach, there are so many decisions that are being made for them and they're not being involved in. So I find that I'm often advocating for their voices to be better heard. And person-centered planning approach definitely helps with that, but nonetheless, people are still making decisions for them. In the UK, I don't know if you have something similar over here, but we have something called the Mental Capacity Act that kicks in when a young person is 16. And we then have to prove that they have mental capacity to make those decisions. And when they don't have that, then they identify people who will make those decisions on their behalf. So it usually involves family members, but will often involve other professionals and also maybe an independent advocate. But I still felt we needed to work harder to really get their views and their thoughts. So just because they don't have the capacity to make fully informed decisions on everything doesn't mean that we shouldn't be giving them the opportunity to have their say and their voices heard. So for me, it was, how do I make sure that we're doing this? How do we equip them with a voice to be able to express themselves? So that's what I'm going to be talking to you about, where I've started from with this. So, I mean, it can mean quite literally giving them a voice, okay? So most recently, an example I shared with somebody while I was here was a young lady I was involved with at 16. I hadn't worked with her before. And she has a tracheostomy. And I asked if she could tolerate a speaking valve and was told no, but her vocal cords were also paralysed. So I said, well, how does she communicate? And it's through her behaviour, which is often challenging. And I said, well, how else can we give her a voice? And for that young lady, the obvious thing was, well, why aren't we using sign language? Why are we not giving her a voice in another way? And it's great. The school has been amazing and taken it on board. And in just 6 months, she has picked up so much sign. And her behaviour's improved because she's more able to express herself. So, you know, that's a very easy way, in a way, of giving somebody a voice. But we may have to think about other ways as well. But where we start, the very earliest stages are looking at preferences and getting children to express their preferences. And that leads on to making choices and decisions. So a preference is when a child shows they like something more than something else. Okay, so I put down here, it might be a yogurt, or thinking about Anna and what she was saying yesterday, or a salad. You know, her preference was likely to be a yogurt because she finds salads quite difficult to eat. So that's expressing a preference. So when you're expressing a preference, you're demonstrating, you're telling somebody what you favour, what you prefer. Okay? And that then moves you on to making choices, which is where you make an actual decision between the things that are being offered. Okay, so preferences come first. And then when we're working with preferences, then we can start to move on to choices and decisions. Okay, when you're expressing a choice, you're looking at your options and you're making a decision about which choice you want to make. Okay, so that's the next step that we move on to. So why is this important? I've already said it, it's leading up to them to be able to express themselves as they move into adulthood and those decisions that we're making with them and for them about their lives. But there's been quite a lot of research, and if they're able to make choices and decisions, it demonstrates that they can have higher quality of life outcomes. And I think one of the things for me about this is about keeping young people safe. So if they're able to make choices and decisions and they know their voices are heard, it's easier for them to say no. Because a lot of the children and young people I work with will give you the answer that they think you want to hear. And usually that's yes. Okay, so a lot of children who are profoundly deaf, I say it's the nodding head syndrome, because they're just, yep. And I'd really like them to be able to say no. Okay, and if we can build that in, then we can help keep them safe. It increases cooperation and task engagement, so if they're able to make choices, there's that lovely saying from Martha Majors, who worked at Perkins, that people with charge need to be in charge. Yeah, they need to be in control of what they're doing. And I always think it's absolutely the right thing because it helps them control their environment and makes their environment work better for them. But it also helps them to be engaged. If they feel they've got some control over what's happening, they're more likely to be engaged in the activities. It helps them regulate their behaviour. I'm going to move through these quite quickly because I've got a case study of a young man and I really want to talk about him because he's amazing. Self-regulation of behaviour, developing communication skills, social interactions, all these things that will enrich their lives as they move into adulthood. It can increase independence. It actually empowers them and gives them self-determination and that sense of autonomy. So it's an incredibly powerful thing that we're doing when we give them the ability to make choices and decisions. I think quite a lot of choice making and identification preferences is happening very early on in behaviour. Okay, I think very often we choose not to recognise that behaviour, and we choose not to acknowledge what they're telling us through those behaviours. But if we don't respond and we don't give them the opportunity to develop their preferences and their choice making in other ways, often those behaviours become more marked and more challenging for us to manage. So it's really important that you start from where the child is and what those behaviours are and what they're telling us. And if those behaviours are not ones that we want, we have to find other ways to help them express themselves so that they don't need to go to those behaviours. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. So, can you tell I feel quite passionate about this? I've really got we're going to hear these children, we're going to get their voices heard, because I'm determined that we are. So through supporting them and the development of choice-making, decision-making, we can enable them to make informed decisions and have a voice that is listened to and acted on. And that's just so important for them. So this is Jessica, who I showed you earlier. I asked Jessica if I could share this with you, and she said yes, I could. So I was visiting Jessica in college, and she kept signing to me, Ellie, Ellie, it's her sister. Ellie, 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 it's her sign name. And I was going, Ellie what? Ellie what? And then she said, Ellie Hare. And I'm thinking, I'm lost. I don't have the context here. I don't know what she's talking about. So I spoke to her intervener. And she said, oh, her sister has dyed her hair green. I went, oh, okay. So I then had a chat with Jessica about this. And then in the conversation, and I then said to Jessica, Jessica, do you want colour on your hair? And she said, yes. I went, okay. What colour do you want? Do you want green? No. Do you want red? I went through all the colours except her favourite one. And she then signed purple. Well, okay. We had, during my visit, at the end of that visit, her parents were in and we had a review meeting for her. So I then supported Jessica to explain this to her parents. And her mum just said, and they're a fabulous family, they are an amazing family, but her mum said, how did we miss that? How did we not ask her that she wanted this? Because we do miss those opportunities. Yeah, sometimes, and life happens. So anyway, her sister then dyed her hair purple, and that was the photograph that she sent me to show her hair was the same as her bus pass cover, which she was very pleased about. And then more recently, she decided she wanted her hair dyed orange. So that's where she is at the moment. She's a very cool young lady. You know, in England we wear Dr. Martens, and you know she's really trendy, and just having the orange hair is her way of expressing herself. And the other students in the college recognise her now. You know, it's oh, actually she's quite hip and trendy. Maybe we'll learn to say hello in sign language. You know, so it's work for her, which is fab. So. Where do we start? Right at the very beginning, with very little children, we're starting to looking at preferences. So we need to identify what those preferences are. And they can be objects that they prefer to play with. They can be people that they like to be with, and places where they like to be. Initially, those preferences might not be intentional, but you parents are amazing at knowing what they prefer. Okay, so you need to share that information with the professionals supporting you so we know where to start from. Because if we always start from the child, we'll get things right, okay? Other than our own preferences. Well, I would prefer them to eat this, so that's what I'm going to put forward as the preference, but it might not be their preference. Okay, so it's starting from what they really like. So once you've identified that, you increase the opportunity for them to express their preferences by sharing them with something that they prefer, you know they like, with something that you know they don't like. Okay, and Nancy talked about this in one of our consultations yesterday with the family about bath or chocolate, I think, because the child hates baths, loves chocolate. Okay, And once the child is beginning to express that preference, then you gradually introduce 2 things that you know they like. And then if they can choose between them, then they are demonstrating that they're ready to make choices. Okay, so that's the next stepping stone. You need to build in choice-making opportunities throughout the day. In schools, I don't know if it's the same in the States or in Germany, but there's this classic of snack time is choice-making time. They get juice or milk or water, and they get apple or orange or something. We're healthy eating in the UK. They're not allowed nice things like biscuits now. And that's it. It happens in that time, in that 15 minutes during the day in school, and then they don't make any other choice-making opportunities available throughout the rest of the day. And I'm saying, oh, for goodness sake, we just build it into everything we're doing. So when they're changing them, if they're putting socks on, which foot do you want a sock on first? Give them 2 T-shirts at PE so they can choose, do you want the red one or the blue one? And they may just reach out for it. But it's about building in those naturally occurring opportunities as much as we can. It's about making choices real. And this is a hard one, about balancing it, about if they make the choice, making them stick with that choice. Okay, that's a really tough one, and it's a tough one for parents sometimes. And you have to pick your battles, okay? I don't always, if a child changes their mind, sometimes I go, yeah, okay, that's fine, because I change my mind. Okay, but sometimes we don't let the children do that. But other times, when we think it's important and we're actually really focusing on making choices, it has to be, well, you chose that. So for today, that's the choice you have to go with. Okay? But it is about making them real and meaningful for them. I've put here about give them time to make their choices and change their minds. And one of the issues we have with people with charge is sometimes it takes time to process that information and to actually formulate their response. And for several youngsters that I work with, actually, it's funny, because although they say yes to lots of things, if they think that's what you want to hear, when it comes to choices, some of them, their default is no. So you show them things, that no. You ask them if they want to do something, and they say no. And so for one young lady I worked with, actually just last week, we've introduced a visual checklist. It's got 3 buttons Velcroed on it, and we ask her a question about something, does she want to do? And she goes, no. And we go, okay, little bit thinking time. And we put the first button on the back of the card. And then we come back and ask her the question again, and very often she'll say no. And we go, okay, little bit more thinking time. Next button gets put on the back of the card. And then the third time we go back and ask her again. Sometimes she'll say no, and we go, okay, that's fine, it's no, that's good. Other times she'll go, yeah, I actually do want that, because she's had time to process and think about it, and then we move on. So it's a way for her, because what we were finding with her was that she would say no, and we were accepting that response, and then she was having a meltdown, because actually she did want to do it. So by giving her that little bit thinking time, a little bit is one of her signs, and it's such a powerful sign. Little bit, okay, we need to back off and wait, little bit, until she's ready. Okay, and because she was doing that when we're doing her visual schedule, every time we show her her visual schedule, she goes, little bit, and we go, okay, and we've got a little timer now that we use, and then we come back and implement the schedule. It made me think that maybe when we're asking her to make choices, we need to give her that little bit. Okay? Give rules ahead of time for when choices might not be available or appropriate. So if you can't allow them to make a choice in a situation, if something has to happen, if you've got to go to hospital, they have got to get in the car. Okay, you can't make a choice about that. So you have to create those rules. So make sure that you don't give them those questions that you're presenting as choices when they can't make a choice. Okay, do you want to get in the car? And I've actually put that as in a future thing, an example in the next slide of where that was given to a child, something, and his response was not what the teacher wanted. So it was invalidated. And then if the choices that they want to make aren't appropriate, try and give them alternatives that they can choose from instead, that they might prefer and they might accept. So, as I said, as choices and decisions become more complex, we need to give them time to think about it. So for that young lady, that little bit thinking time, sometimes I might ask them a question, say, I'm going to go away and make a cup of tea or talk to somebody, and when I come back, I'm going to ask you again. Okay, and then you tell me what you want to do. Okay, so it's building in that time for them to actually process and think through what their response is going to be. Draw on real-life experiences to make a choice, and especially an informed choice. You have to know what both the options are that are being presented for you to choose from, because you can only make a choice if you really know what's involved in that choice making. So make sure that you can draw on their real life experiences and also the experiences of others. So Adam, that I'm going to share with you later, he has an older brother, and that has been so helpful in the process of getting his voice and finding out what his views are for adulthood because of his older brother. And it included things like socially, what do you want to do with your intervener? Well, Ethan goes to the gym. Ethan does this, Ethan does that. What would you like to do? I'd quite like to go to the gym. So he now goes to the gym with a male intervener. Yeah, but he also likes swimming, so he goes and does his swimming as well, lots of different things. Respect their choices as different from your own and not just right or wrong. So I was in a school and I don't like them, but there's this scheme of storytelling where they nail these props to boards. They're called story sacks, story boxes. Do you have them? And I really don't like them because all the objects that are being used to tell the story are glued to these great big wooden boards, and so it's really hard for the deaf-blind child to actually get to have a good look at them. But this young man, it was about a builder building a house, and there was a nail on the board and a hammer. And he was asked, do you want to bang the nail? And he said, no. And his teacher said, see, this is what I'm dealing with. He opposes me, he defies me at every step. I said, but you asked him a question. Do you want to? And no is equally valid as yes. If you wanted him to do it, you should have said, Harry, bang the nail. Instruction, not question. Yeah? So it seems so obvious, doesn't it? And I have to say, teachers particularly, if a child doesn't give the response that they want, can take it very personally. And Julie's sitting here going, yes. So it is respecting that their choices might be different from yours. If, when you're coming to adulthood and you've got some serious decisions to make, and they really don't have the capacity to make those choices, it's about making sure that the choices that are made in their best interests. Okay, and there have been times with young adults that I'm working with where what parents want for them is different to what the young person wants. And that's really tricky because you need to listen to what the parents want, but you need to also balance that with the views of the young person. And in those situations, I will often bring an advocate in for the young person who will express their views as well. So an example was a young man is in a residential college setting, and in addition to charge, he has other issues that are life-limiting. So his mum would like him home. And I fully understand where she is coming from with that, if her time is precious with her son and she doesn't know how much longer that she's got with him. But he wants to stay at college. It's a residential setting. And so we brought an advocate in, and actually the compromise that's been made there is that they've made a room available for his mum, and she can spend as much time in college with him as she wants to. So we've listened to his voice, but we've listened to mum as well, and we've come to a compromise. So it can be really tough, that one, as they get older, and sometimes they have different views. So just thinking about how we provide these choices at home and in the classroom as well. So if you're going to do an activity with them, then think about, well, what do you want to bake? Do you want to make cookies? Or do you want to do cakes? Or do you want to do a salad? Anything that they might like to do. It might be, which cup do you want to drink from? Okay, it might be a red cup and a yellow cup, and which one do you want to choose? It can be the order in which tasks are completed, and for a lot of children with charge, this is a real way of diffusing the angst that there is sometimes between the child and the parents about things that need to be done. So he's got to make his bed. He's got to go and buy the bread. He has tasks, he has to do them. And actually, if you can give them some control over which should we do first? Do you want to make your bed, or do you want to go and buy the bread? And then they've got a choice, and they've got that control, and that often can help diffuse the situation. What materials are they going to use for an activity? Do you want to wear the red apron or the blue apron? Should we use this bowl or that one? All those little things are choices, and you're helping them. And if you respond to them, you're helping them know that their voice is being heard. And for Jessica, it was such a long process. Her parents were amazing, and they still are, incredible family. But about the age of 10, her dad rang me and said, guess what happened last night? I told Jessica we had an egg for tea, and Jessica said, no, sausages. I went, what did you do? And he went, we went out and bought sausages. I went, yes! So it took her until the age of 10 to actually really understand what communication is about. It's not just that you're giving information, you're giving me instructions, you're asking me questions, and I respond and say yes, 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 yes. Yeah, it's about, I have my own thoughts and views and opinions, and I can express those. And with choice making, that's one of the things that we're doing. We're helping them understand that we will listen to what they've got to say to us, and that we can use that. And by doing that, they can control their world even more and what's happening for them. Okay, so this choice making is such an important thing. Where to have a task or activity, if they don't like brushing their teeth in the bathroom, maybe moving to the kitchen sink will actually make a difference. Yeah, and actually, as an aside, that's one of the things with Adam was he has this terrible phobia about hospitals, and I'm sure that's not uncommon with some of the children that you're with because of all his experiences. You know, he's had a tough time, as a lot of them have. And so when we were looking at the vaccination for COVID, his parents really wanted to have it to keep him safe. But just the prospect of taking him into the doctor's surgery, and it takes 3 or 4 people to pin him down, which his mum really hates. So we were just chatting, and I said, well, why don't we change the story? Why don't we change the story of what happens when you have injections? So we changed it. We changed the story, and it was the nurse is going to come into the home, and she's going to give you your injection at home. And Adam will go, ow! But afterwards, Adam will be better, yeah? And it will keep him well and keep him strong. And Adam accepted it. So his family, and I'm charged parents, you're amazing. And I really do mean that. There's something unique about parents of kids with charge. And yeah, and the families that I work with, they're just stunning. They're just great. So building in those choices. So how do we help them to communicate their choices? As I've said, they will often do it through behaviour. And if we don't listen to the choices that they're making, and they're communicating to us through those behaviours, sometimes they will exacerbate. So it's about looking at other ways that we can get them to express those preferences and choices. So right at the beginning, it might be a toy that you know they really like and a toy that you don't know they don't like. And then it might be two toys that they like both of them and they get to choose between them. What you use is dependent on the state of symbolic development that the child is at, okay? Because you move through development from real objects through eventually to symbols and written word, so printed words. But there are lots of steps between. So you start with real objects, and you start with objects that the child uses in that activity. So one parent was talking to us about a flour bag being used to communicate to the children in class that it's cooking time. Well, that flour bag doesn't mean anything to that child because the ingredients are all weighed out for them. So flour is what is in a bowl, it's not what's in the bag. And what happens when you're making a fruit salad and you don't want to use flour? So use the apron that they put on for cooking, or use something in that activity that they use every time. And that's our starting point. Then we come on to more standard objects, which we call objects of reference. So if a child is going to have a drink and they're drinking orally, then you start with their cup, whatever cup it is that they have. And then you can move on to any cup that will represent, yeah? And then after that, you move on to photographs. And then you move on to drawings, then symbols, and then word. Okay, so there's a lot of steps. And where I think quite a lot of professionals go wrong is they move from object straight to symbol. I'm going, whoa, hang on a minute, where's all the bit in the middle that we need to be looking at? Okay, so you need to be thinking about that. We have choosing boards. So the top right-hand one is the choosing board for a young lady when she goes to the park. These are 3 things that we know she loves to do at the park. So the big swing, slide, and the sand pit. So we get to the park with her, and she has the choosing board, and she chooses what she wants to do. And whatever she picks, we have to wait for her because she takes them all off, has a really good look because she's got very restricted vision, puts them on, and then she sits and looks at them again, and then she makes her choice. Okay, so it's not necessarily the first thing she takes off the board. It's giving her time to know what all the choices are, what's available to her, and then making her choice. Then, if you're using a visual schedule, and so this is one from school from a little girl called Josie. She was doing reading by looking at books, picture books, then doing some counting, and then it's Josie time, Josie choosing time. So we're building in those opportunities for those children to make those choices. And very often, if she knows Josie choosing time is coming, she'll do the maths so quickly to get to Josie choosing time. But that's really great, because that's almost like a reward. But she knows it's coming, and she knows we're going to listen to her, and she can choose what she wants to do. Task lists, really helpful. And I use these a lot in the classroom, actually, where the child can choose the order that they're going to do activities that have been set for them. But we also do it at home. Some of the parents use these for tasks for making the bed, brushing your teeth, going to buy the bread. And the child chooses the sequence that we're going to do them in. And they can change that sequence. If they change their mind, I've had enough sitting down for now, I want to get up and move. Then, yeah, okay, you can change the order, that's fine. I want these things done, but you can have the control of the order in which they happen. The picture is just of a young lady called Ruby with her intervener, Bhavna. I want to clone Bhavna, and all of the parents that we've spoken to at the moment who are saying how difficult it is to get interveners, it is difficult. Unfortunately, it's not something that's easily resolved, but we keep working on it. But Ruby has a very sensitive communication partner. Ruby is moving into tactile sign, which you can see her using there. And her sign, we're now on putting 3 signs together, which I am so excited about because there are people who have written her off in the past. And we kept going, no, she just needs time with sign and for it to be communicated. She's 14 now. And this last year, she's just exploded with her signing. Okay, but we just didn't give up. We just kept providing it. And her intervener is so skilled. And all those tiny things that Ruby expresses as choices, her intervener goes, oh, yeah. And now that she's able to sign, she's understanding how powerful the use of sign is. I was there with her last week. She was so controlling me. I want to do this, I want to do this. So I made her do an activity with me that I led. And a funny story about that, I took strawberries and white chocolate for her to cover this. We're doing hot and cold. She understands the concept of hot now, so now we're working on cold. So I wanted her to, we were going to melt the chocolate, dip the strawberries in it, put them in the fridge, and then her family can eat them with her later on. And I got the chocolate out, and she kept looking at the chocolate. And we were putting it on the plate, and she was looking at it. And I was going, chocolate. And she was going, no chocolate, no chocolate. I was going, yeah, it's chocolate. Yeah, it's chocolate. It's white chocolate. She's not seen white chocolate before. And so suddenly we had a moment where I persuaded her to get the tiniest amount of chocolate on her little index finger. And she touched it to her lip. Now, normally she'd wipe it off straight away, but she didn't. She left it there, and her tongue came out and had a little taste, then had another little taste, and then another little taste. And she burst out laughing, just going, chocolate, chocolate. I'm going, yeah, it's chocolate. That also is an illustration of how dependent they are on us, which I think you're going to talk about, aren't you? To bring situations to them, to expand their knowledge and understanding and their concept development. Because she's had lots of work with chocolate, but it's always been milk chocolate. And I just thought, oh, I'm just going to do white chocolate. Me thinking, because it's nice with strawberries. But actually, that came back to me going, oh, yeah, I need to be careful about this. So that's just an aside about her. She's lovely, and I'm really excited about what she's doing at the moment. And then this is a talking mat. Do you have these in Germany? You do. So this is one that we used in lockdown with a teenager to try and get them to express about how they were feeling about things and what they want. And we wanted them to make choices about what they wanted to do, and they were finding it hard. So I thought, well, if we go for these are the things that are good, those are the things that we know we can use for choosing, these are the things that I really don't like, and these are the things I'm not sure about. So it also gave us a lot to talk about her emotional well-being and her mental health, because we've been talking about it a lot, about the impact of COVID, not just on our kids with charge, but on everybody. You know, there is a real issue at the moment with mental health and well-being in the whole population as a consequence of the pandemic. So using talking mats like that help to make choices, but it also really helps us to know what they really like and what they don't like. Thinking about the person-centered planning that Nancy was talking about. Yeah, those are things that we can use to help them. Adam! He is amazing. Do you know, I spoke to his mum the other day and I said, I go into school to see Adam and to support him. This young man never fails to affirm me and to make me feel so good. Because I walk him and he just goes, Gail! And he's just so delighted to have me there. And he's just stunning. So Adam has said that I can share this with you. We did a lot of work with understanding what Germany was. But he has grandparents in Spain, so we were able to use that to help him understand it's another country and that I was going to fly here and all that sort of thing. And he's got charge conferences in England that he's been to, so he'd got that direct experience. And it took quite a lot of work to make sure that he really understood what he was agreeing to. But he said yes in the end. So this is Adam. I've worked with him since he was tiny, and he's now 18. I can't believe where the time's gone with him. He attends a school called John Chilton School, and I am naming it because it is a great school. There are schools that I have to go to where I wake up in the morning and think, oh no, I've got to go there today. And there are schools that I wake up in the morning and go, yay! And I do for this. I'm going to John Chilton School. It's just a fantastic school. The staff are so willing to work with me, and they are so good in thinking the next steps, and we talk together and we liaise. The parents are very much part of the team. In England, it's Parents in Partnership, and this is a school that actually really does embrace that. And he has a very supportive and enabling family. So he has a lot of things going for him. He had a tough time in early years with interventions, hospitalizations, surgeries, all those things that you'll be very aware of. And when he was in nursery, he spent a lot of his time standing by the window looking out at the trees, because everything that was happening in nursery was sensorily overwhelming for him. And that was the starting point that we had. So with the school, we worked with him on preferences, we worked on using objects, and then we moved on to photographs. He is a good hearing aid user, and he does vocalize, which you will hear, because I've got a recording of him that he's happy for me to share with you. But for a long time in school, he chose not to use his voice. And when I say a long time, it was 4 or 5 years, maybe. And even now, if his parents take him into a situation that's difficult, he stopped using his voice. Okay. And I had a really interesting discussion with him about the holiday that they went on, because they usually stay in the same place, and they couldn't. So it was different. And he gave me this long spiel about what. So on Monday I did this, on Tuesday, okay. Saturday we went back home. I walked into the kitchen, and there was my voice. It had been lost. I'm going, oh, wow. But he has these behaviours that tell us when he is stressed. And losing his voice is one of them. Another is this grabbing at other children. And for us, that's always that he's telling us that life is stressful for him at the moment, and we need to listen to that and respond to that. But we've also done huge amounts of work on getting him to express himself. And when I was in a couple of weeks ago, he actually said, oh, it's really tough at the moment. And I, whoa. Okay, let's talk about this. What's really tough? And it was the Jubilee celebrations that were going to go on, and the party and everything else, and what was happening in school. But then we were able to talk him through the strategies the school has put in place that he can draw on. I said, okay, so Ads, if it's getting really difficult for you, what can you do? I can make a choice. I can go to this quiet space. I can go and have a cup of tea with this person. You know, so things were in place, and he's got the opportunity to make choices about what he does. He doesn't have to be in the busyness of those Jubilee celebrations. He can choose to put himself separately, which means that he then won't have a meltdown. So that is amazing to me, that he's actually reached that point that he can do that. We also gave him sign language for the times when he couldn't use his voice. And I was talking to him at a conference in the UK, and he lost his voice. And I said, do you want to use your signs? And he just went and started signing to me. I went, okay, we're fine. This is good. So his parents work hard to give him lots of real-life experiences. His school worked really hard. And now that he's in what we call sixth form, he's got one more year in school, and his curriculum for the next year is most of his learning is going to be out in the community. Okay, so we're working very hard on that. Since year 9, which is when they're 13, we have, by law, we have to use a person-centred approach and work towards adulthood. It has to be in all the planning, what we're working towards in adulthood. So as a part of that, we had to find out what Adam wanted. So we spent a lot of time with him talking about what his options might be. And he has been so clear and consistent about what he wants. And he wants to live independently of his family. Now, he doesn't have the mental capacity to make fully informed decisions, but he can make some decisions. And a conversation that I documented and submitted as evidence was, I said to him, so you want to live without your family? And he said, yes. And I said, oh, so will you see your family? He said, they will come to visit. I will open, this is his actions, I will open the door and I will say, come in. I will give them a cup of tea and a biscuit. And then I will open the door and go, bye. It's fabulous, isn't it? He's really expressing what he wants. And we said, oh, do you want to be completely alone? Yes. Oh, okay. So how do we work on this one? Well, Adam, what happens when you want to go to the hospital for an appointment? Mum will take me. I said, well, what if Mum's busy? Oh, I need an intervener. Or my girlfriend can take me. Yes. You know, he's expressing so much here about what he wants. So we've done so much work with him. His school has been amazing. It isn't easy because of financial constraints. Social services are not keen on what he wants, but he's very clear, and by law, they have to listen to what he says. We also have social care assessments, which are done under something called deaf-blind guidance, and his local authority didn't have someone qualified to do it. So they asked me to do it, and I was going, well, that's great, because I can put everything in. And then they have a law that legally they have to respond to the recommendations that I make. So, hey, that's a good run, that's a winner. So that has been part of it, but we are still in that battle. His parents are still in that battle. He wants to go to a residential college setting. So they've been looking at different colleges and making a short list of ones that might be appropriate for him. And I was talking to Adam about this, and, you know, I nearly cried when he said to me, it's my choice. And I was, yeah, go Ads. Yeah, it really is your decision, buddy. You know, we're going to work on this. So it's just so exciting. And one other thing that we've done before I show you the video of him is we use something called job carving, which is mentioned in the slide and in the presentation. And it's about looking at what they really enjoy doing and carving out a job around them. So he's tried different jobs in work experiences in sixth form. He's done cafe, he's done gardening, and he's done looking after animals. And his preference is to looking after animals. But he's also a young man that I could just see him in an old people's place, because he loves to talk, loves to sit and talk to people. And I could just, you take him out to a cafe and he approaches people at their tables and starts chatting to them. You know, he's got his intervener there to make sure he's safe, but it's a really lovely thing. So maybe that's something that he will be able to do. But it's about keeping those options open for him. And the college that he's going to go to, hopefully, is one that will, yes, work on his independent life skills to make him as independent as possible. He will always need support, but we can make him as independent as possible, and also to support him in preparation for some form of employment. So I'm going to share Adam with you now, because he's just the best way to end something, but Claudia's going to do it for me.
like you, Jack, yeah.
Like Dad
Yeah.
and Ethan as well.
Yeah.
They're both adults.
Yeah. I would like to live in my own house.
Okay. Would you like to live on your own, or would you like to have somebody helping you out?
Me. It would be like just a house with a hall, and it will have a living room, it will have a kitchen, it will have an upstairs bit, it'll have a garden right at the back.
Oh, nice. Would you have a bath or a shower?
A shower.
So you don't want a bath, you'd rather...
I do want a bath.
Or you want both?
Bath and shower.
Okay.
Yeah.
Adam,
Yeah.
would you like to work with children or work with animals?
Work with animals.
You'd quite like to work with animals, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So what kind of jobs could you do working with animals?
I like to feed them. Like horses, sheep, cows, horses, sheep, cows, pigs, everything, all the animals.
So that's the lovely Adam. And what we've done, do you know, videoing these interviews with them is such a good way of getting their voices heard in meetings, because for Adam it would be overwhelming to sit in a meeting with loads of people. But this, you can see all the pauses that we had in the filming, and he needs a lot of processing time, a lot of thinking time when you ask him a question. And so by doing this, Adam's voice gets heard. And it's more powerful than anything any professional or parent can say, I have to, in these meetings as we prepare for adulthood. So I hope that's just touched a little bit on making choices on what we're aiming for in the longer term. But I could have talked about it all day, but hey, but thank you.